I still remember the first time I tried to build a website. I spent hours, no, days, copying and pasting code I didn't understand, convinced I was on the fast track to becoming a developer. The result? A broken, glitchy mess that crashed the moment I clicked a button. I felt like a total failure. That crushing disappointment, that feeling of being overwhelmed and utterly lost, that's a feeling I never want anyone else to experience. If you've ever started learning something new, only to hit a wall that made you question your own abilities, then you are in the right place. This isn't just a guide, it's a lifeline. I've been there, stuck in that frustrating loop of repeated mistakes, and over the years, I've discovered not only what those common pitfalls are but, more importantly, the simple, actionable steps to escape them. Stick with me, and I promise you'll see that wall in front of you not as a barrier, but as a stepping stone. Let's break down those mistakes together, one by one, and unlock the path to real, lasting progress. The very first and perhaps most insidious mistake beginners make is the obsession with perfection right out of the gate. We are terrified of being bad at something. We want our first blog post to be a literary masterpiece, our first drawing to look like a Renaissance painting, our first line of code to be a work of algorithmic art. This pursuit of a flawless start is a trap. It paralyzes you. It stops you from even beginning because the gap between your current skill and that ideal is so vast it seems impossible to bridge. I call this the paralysis of perfection. You spend more time planning, researching the best way to start, and worrying about the outcome than you do actually practicing the skill itself. The truth is, every expert was once a beginner who produced terrible work. The key to their success wasn't innate talent, it was their willingness to be bad, to be messy, and to learn from the mess. So, how do we fix this? The solution is deceptively simple: embrace the concept of a minimum viable product or MVP. This term comes from the startup world, but it's a powerhouse for learning. Instead of trying to create the perfect final product, aim to create the simplest, most basic version that works. For your first blog post, just write 300 coherent words. Don't worry about SEO, fancy images, or a captivating headline. Just write. For your first program, make it display "Hello, World," and then add one tiny feature. For your first song, record a simple melody. The goal is to complete something, anything. This builds momentum. It gives you a small win, a psychological boost that proves you can do it. Then, and only then, can you iterate. Go back and improve one small thing. Then another. Perfection is not the starting point, it's a distant destination you reach through a long series of imperfect, but completed, steps. Your journey begins not with a masterpiece, but with a single, clumsy step. And that step is the most important one you'll ever take. This leads us directly into the second trap, one that feels incredibly productive but is actually a cleverly disguised cage. I'm talking about tutorial hell. You know the feeling. You've completed one online course, so you start another. You've watched every beginner YouTube tutorial on the planet, your browser tabs are a graveyard of Learn X in 5 hours videos, and you can follow along with the instructor perfectly. You feel like you're learning, accumulating knowledge. But then, when you sit down in front of a blank screen and try to create something from scratch, your mind goes completely blank. Why? Because passive consumption is not learning. It's the illusion of progress. You've become a tourist in the land of skill, following guided maps but never learning to navigate the wilderness on your own. I lived in tutorial hell for almost a year when I was learning to code. I could replicate what the teacher did, but I had no idea how the pieces fit together. The moment I encountered a problem the tutorial hadn't covered, I was utterly lost, and my only solution was to find another tutorial. It was a cycle of dependency. The real learning doesn't happen when you're following instructions, it happens when you're struggling, debugging, and being forced to consult the documentation to understand why your code is breaking. That struggle is where neural pathways are forged. The frustration you feel isn't a sign of failure, it's the sound of your brain building new muscles. Tutorials are a great map, but you have to leave the map to actually explore the territory. The escape from tutorial hell is both simple and terrifying. You must start building your own projects, no matter how small. Immediately. Today. Do not take another course until you have applied what you already know. The moment you learn a new concept, you must turn off the video and implement it yourself. If you learned how to make a button change color on a web page, don't just copy the code. Open a new file and try to do it from memory. Then, change it. Make the button square instead of round. Make it change size instead of color. Break it on purpose and see if you can figure out how to fix it. This active, project-based learning is the only way to transmute passive knowledge into active skill. It's messy and frustrating, but it's real. Your goal is not to complete tutorials, your goal is to make things. Let the tutorials be a reference you consult when you're stuck, not the destination itself. The third common mistake is one I see crippling ambitious beginners more than any other, and it's the silent killer of progress. It's the relentless, misguided focus on the goal while completely ignoring the system required to reach it. You become so fixated on the distant mountain peak of becoming fluent in French or building a successful business that the treacherous, daily path to get there becomes an afterthought. You dream of the outcome, but you haven't designed the daily actions that make that outcome inevitable. This is what I call the goal obsession trap. When your only measure of success is the distant, massive goal, every day feels like a failure because you're not there yet. This leads to burnout, frustration, and quitting. I learned this the hard way. My goal was to write a novel. I would sit for hours, staring at a blank document, waiting for inspiration to strike so I could write a masterpiece. Some days, nothing would come. Other days, I'd manage a few hundred words, but it felt insignificant compared to the 80,000 words I needed. I felt like a failure every single day. The goal was so big it cast a shadow over any small progress I made. I was ready to give up. The breakthrough came when I stopped focusing on writing a novel and instead focused on building a writing system. My goal was no longer the outcome, my goal was the process. The fix for this is a fundamental mindset shift. Fall in love with the system, not the goal. A system is what you do on a regular basis. If you're a writer, your system is not write a book. Your system is write for 25 minutes every single morning before checking email. If you want to get fit, your system is not lose 20 pounds. Your system is do this specific 20-minute workout every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. By focusing on executing a tiny, sustainable system, you make consistent, daily progress that is invisible in the short term but monumental in the long term. The goal becomes a natural byproduct of a system you enjoy and can maintain. You stop judging your days by how close you are to the peak, and you start judging them by whether you stayed true to the path. And that makes all the difference. The fourth mistake is so tempting because it feels like efficiency. It's the desire to skip the so-called boring fundamentals and jump straight to the cool, advanced stuff. You want to build the complex video game, not spend time learning about variables and data types. You want to paint a stunning portrait, not practice shading simple shapes. You want to play your favorite song on the guitar, not drill scales. This is the quick fix fantasy, and it's a shortcut that leads directly to a dead end. Without a solid foundation, everything you build will be fragile, unstable, and ultimately will collapse under its own complexity. I witnessed this in my own journey with music production. I was obsessed with creating the complex, layered synth sounds I heard in professional tracks. I downloaded advanced synthesizers and tried to mimic them, twisting knobs randomly. The results were awful. I was missing the fundamental understanding of sound design, what an oscillator, a filter, and an envelope actually do. I was trying to run a marathon without learning how to walk. My knowledge was a house of cards, impressive from a distance but blown over by the slightest breeze of a real challenge. I had to humbly go back to square one and learn how a single, simple waveform is created and manipulated. The solution is to reframe your relationship with the fundamentals. See them not as a boring hurdle, but as your superpower. Mastering the basics is what gives you true creative freedom. A chef who truly understands how salt, heat, and acid work doesn't need a recipe, they can create. A programmer who deeply understands core concepts can learn any new framework with ease. The fundamentals are the grammar of your skill. You must invest disproportionate time here. Dedicate the first 20% of your practice sessions solely to fundamental drills. For a coder, that might mean daily exercises on sites like CodeWars. For a writer, it could be writing simple, perfect sentences. For a musician, it's scales and arpeggios. This isn't glamorous work, but it compounds exponentially. It builds an intuitive understanding that allows you to solve advanced problems not by memorizing solutions, but by understanding the principles. The boring basics are the secret weapon of every true master. The fifth mistake is one we are often too embarrassed to admit, even to ourselves. It's the silent, solitary struggle of trying to learn in a vacuum. We hunch over our work, alone, convinced that asking for help is a sign of weakness or that our work isn't good enough to be seen yet. This isolation is the fertilizer for imposter syndrome and the enemy of growth. It's the mistaken belief that you must figure everything out on your own. I held on to this belief for years, wearing my solo struggles as a badge of honor. The truth is, it was just pride, and it massively slowed me down. I'll never forget the first time I shared a half-finished, bug-ridden piece of code with a more experienced developer. My heart was pounding. I was prepared for ridicule, for them to see how much of a fraud I was. Instead, they glanced at it for 30 seconds and pointed at one line. "This variable is global," they said. "It's creating a side effect you're not accounting for." That was it. 30 seconds to solve a problem I had been wrestling with for 2 days. In that moment, I didn't feel stupid, I felt liberated. I realized that the knowledge I needed wasn't always in a book or a tutorial, it was often in the mind of someone who had already made the mistake I was currently making. My perspective shifted from "I must prove I can do this alone" to "I must learn this as efficiently as possible." The fix is to actively and consistently seek feedback. But not just any feedback. You must seek out brutal, honest, and constructive criticism. Find a community, a mentor, or a peer group. Share your unfinished work. Ask specific questions. Don't just say, "Is this good?" Ask, "Does this function seem efficient, or does this paragraph convey the emotion I'm aiming for?" This does two things. First, it gives you targeted, actionable insights you can't get on your own. Second, and perhaps more importantly, it desensitizes you to the fear of judgment. You learn that feedback is not a personal attack, it is raw material for improvement. It is the chisel that sculpts the rough stone of your early efforts into a refined skill. Make feedback a non-negotiable part of your learning system. The sixth mistake is so pervasive that it quietly undermines every effort you make, and it's one we rarely connect to our learning progress. We treat our minds as pure software, forgetting they are running on the hardware of our bodies. I'm talking about the complete neglect of physical and mental fuel. You pull all-nighters, survive on coffee and junk food, and sacrifice sleep for more practice time, believing this is the price of dedication. I was the king of this. I thought the more hours I crammed in, the faster I'd learn. But I hit a wall where more hours just led to more frustration and diminishing returns. My brain felt foggy, my focus scattered. This is because learning is not just a mental process, it's a biological one. When you learn a new skill, you are physically creating and strengthening neural pathways in your brain. This process, called neuroplasticity, is incredibly resource-intensive. Your brain requires quality sleep, proper nutrition, and regular movement to perform this construction work effectively. When you deprive it of these essentials, you are essentially asking a construction crew to build a complex building without giving them any materials. They can't do it. Skimping on sleep is perhaps the worst offender. During deep sleep, your brain consolidates memories and practices what you learned during the day. It's like a crucial software update that installs everything you've downloaded. Without it, that learning never properly solidifies. The fix is to stop treating your body as a mere transportation device for your brain and start treating it as the engine of your progress. This isn't fluffy self-help, it's a performance optimization strategy. Prioritize sleep as non-negotiable. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep. It is not wasted time, it is active learning time. Fuel your brain with real food, reduce sugar and processed foods that cause energy crashes and brain fog. Incorporate physical movement into your day. Even a 15-minute walk can increase blood flow to the brain, sharpening your focus and creativity. Schedule breaks every 45 to 60 minutes using a technique like the Pomodoro technique. Step away from your work. Stretch, hydrate, look out a window. These practices are not distractions from your learning, they are what make deep, effective learning possible. You will learn more in 4 well-fueled hours than in 12 depleted ones. The seventh mistake is the heartbreak of inconsistency. We start with a blaze of motivation, dedicating huge, heroic bursts of time and energy to our new skill. We practice for 3 hours on Saturday, feel fantastic about our progress, and then, life happens. We get busy, tired, or distracted, and we don't touch the skill again for another week. This cycle of intense effort followed by long periods of nothing is like trying to build a fire by dumping a pile of wood on it once a week and expecting it to stay lit. It won't. The embers die out, and you have to start from scratch every single time. Motivation is a fantastic starter, but it is a terrible sustainer. I lived this cycle for months with my guitar. I'd have a free afternoon and play until my fingers were sore, feeling a rush of accomplishment. But then, during the busy work week, the guitar would sit in its case. When I picked it up again the next weekend, I had lost ground. My fingers were softer, the chords I'd learned were fuzzy, and I spent half my practice time just relearning what I had already forgotten. It was demoralizing and incredibly inefficient. I was mistaking the intense, motivated burst for genuine progress, but real progress is subtle and cumulative. It happens in the small, daily spaces. The fix for this is to understand the profound power of consistency over intensity. It is far, far better to practice for 15 minutes every single day than for 5 hours once a week. The goal is not to do a lot, the goal is to do a little, often. This is how you keep the neural pathways warm and under construction. You don't let the foundation settle and crack between sessions. To make this happen, you must stop relying on motivation and start building a tiny, unbreakable habit. The key is to make the barrier to entry so low that you can't say no. Promise yourself you will code for just 10 minutes. Promise you will write just one sentence. Promise you will practice just one scale on the piano. On days you feel great, you'll often do more. But on days you feel exhausted or overwhelmed, you only have to do that tiny, minimal commitment. This is how you build the rhythm of mastery. You win not through grand, sweeping gestures, but through the quiet, relentless power of showing up every day, without fanfare, and doing the work. The 8th common mistake is one that the digital age has magnified 1,000-fold, and it's a silent thief of joy and progress. I'm talking about the poison of comparison. You are just starting out, you've built your first simple website, and you feel a flicker of pride. Then, you go online and see a portfolio from another developer that looks like it was designed by a futuristic AI. Instantly, your accomplishment turns to ash. Your simple site now feels pathetic, and that voice in your head whispers, "Why even try? I'll never be that good." This is the trap of comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. I fell into this trap constantly. I would follow experts on social media who made everything look effortless. Their code was elegant, their designs flawless, their explanations crystal clear. I didn't see the decade of struggle, the countless failed projects, the deep well of experience that made their work seem simple. I was only seeing the highlight reel, the final, polished product, and I was comparing it to my own messy, behind-the-scenes reality. This comparison bred resentment, both for their success and for my own perceived inadequacy. It made my journey feel pointless before it had even truly begun. The fix for this is a 2-part mental shift. First, you must actively curate your input. Unfollow accounts that make you feel inspired but inadequate. Instead, seek out people who are just a few steps ahead of you. Their progress feels attainable, and their current struggles will mirror your own. They are your true peers, not the distant experts. Second, and more importantly, you must shift your focus from external comparison to internal benchmarking. Your only valid comparison is to your past self. Keep a journal of your work. Look back at the code you wrote 1 month ago, the drawing you sketched 2 weeks ago, the first sentence you ever wrote in a new language. You will be amazed at the progress you have made. Measure your growth against your own starting line, not against the finish line of someone who started running years before you. Your journey is uniquely yours, and the only person you need to be better than is the person you were yesterday. The 9th mistake is perhaps the most deeply ingrained fear we face as beginners, the terror of failure. We see a misstep not as data, but as a verdict on our ability. A bug in our code isn't a puzzle to be solved, it's proof we're not smart enough. A negative comment on our work isn't one person's opinion, it's a global confirmation of our inadequacy. This fear is paralyzing because it makes the act of trying feel dangerous. We become so afraid of doing it wrong that we unconsciously choose to not do it at all, or we stick rigidly to safe, proven paths where failure is unlikely. This strangles innovation and growth at its root. I used to have a paralyzing fear of writing bad code. I would research for hours, trying to find the perfect architecture before writing a single line. I was so afraid of making a structural mistake that I made the ultimate mistake: I wrote nothing. My project stagnated in the planning phase. The cost of potentially being wrong felt higher than the cost of doing nothing. It was only when a seasoned developer told me, the best code is often the code you throw away, that something clicked. I realized that failure wasn't the end of the journey, it was the primary mode of transportation. The fix for this is to actively and systematically reframe your relationship with failure. You must stop seeing it as a setback and start seeing it as the essential feedback loop of learning. One powerful technique is to create a failure log. This is a document where you deliberately record your mistakes, bugs, and shortcomings. But you don't just write down what went wrong. You must complete the most important part, the analysis. For every entry, write down what you learned from that specific failure. A bug that took you 4 hours to fix taught you about a critical concept in variable scope. A clumsy sentence in your writing taught you about the power of active voice. By doing this, you are performing a psychological alchemy. You are transforming the emotional sting of failure into the cold, hard currency of wisdom. You begin to see that each failure is not a hole you fall into, but a step you climb on. You will start to value the lessons learned from your mistakes more than the easy, shallow successes that taught you nothing. The 10th and final mistake we will discuss is perhaps the most transformative to overcome. It is the failure to teach what you are learning. We often operate under the assumption that we must be a master, an undisputed expert, before we can possibly share our knowledge. We wait for a mythical future date when we will feel qualified enough to speak up. This is a catastrophic error because it ignores a fundamental truth: teaching is not a presentation of your final knowledge, it is the very process that solidifies and expands that knowledge in your own mind. I held on to this belief for years. I consumed information like a hoarder, filling my mind with facts and techniques, but I never organized them or tried to explain them to anyone else. My understanding was a cluttered attic full of boxes I never opened. The shift happened when a friend, knowing I was learning web development, asked me a simple question about how CSS works. I launched into an explanation, and about 3 sentences in, I realized I had no idea how to clearly describe the relationship between classes and IDs. I was stammering. I had to go back, research, and truly understand it before I could explain it. In that moment, I wasn't just learning, I was learning how to learn. The fix is to make teaching an integral part of your learning cycle from day one. You do not need an audience or a platform to start. The act of forcing your brain to translate a concept from a messy, internal understanding into a clear, external explanation is where the magic happens. This is known as the Feynman technique. Try to explain the concept you just learned out loud, as if to a complete beginner. When you hit a point where your explanation becomes fuzzy or you have to use jargon, you have found a gap in your own understanding. That gap is your next learning target. Write a short blog post about the problem you solved today. Create a 1-minute video summary of a new concept. Explain your code to a rubber duck on your desk. By engaging in this process, you move from passive consumer to active creator of understanding. You stop just collecting information and start building wisdom. You will uncover the depths of what you know, and more importantly, the depths of what you don't, guiding your studies with ruthless efficiency. Now, we have walked through 10 of the most common and damaging mistakes that hold beginners captive. We started with the paralysis of perfection and journeyed all the way to the failure to teach what we learn. But knowing these pitfalls is only half the battle. If we stop here, this is just another piece of interesting information that will fade from your memory. The critical, non-negotiable next step is to move from passive understanding to active implementation. Knowledge without action is merely entertainment. Let me be very clear, your brain will resist this. It will tell you that you understand, so the job is done. It will tempt you to move on to the next tutorial, the next article, the next quick hit of learning without the accompanying effort. This is the final, meta mistake, treating the identification of the problem as the solution. It is not. The solution lives exclusively in the doing. The value of realizing you focus too much on goals is zero unless you deliberately build a system today. The insight that you are in tutorial hell is useless unless you close the video and start a personal project right now. Therefore, I am not going to just end this script. I am going to give you a direct call to action. I want you to press pause. Right now. Take a piece of paper or open a new document. I want you to read back through these 10 points and identify the one single mistake that resonates most deeply with you. The one that made you nod your head or feel a pang of recognition. Got it? Now, I want you to write down one tiny, specific, and immediate action you will take in the next 24 hours to apply the fix. Not a grand plan. A single action. If your problem is inconsistency, your action is, I will practice for 10 minutes at 8 a.m. tomorrow. If your problem is the fear of failure, your action is, I will write down one mistake I made today and what it taught me. This single act of commitment, of writing it down and then doing it, is the spark that ignites real change. It transforms you from a spectator into the architect of your own learning journey. Now, let's structure the remaining parts of our journey. We have laid the foundation, identified the pitfalls, and issued a call to action. But a map is only useful if you know how to read it. So, for the final sections of this script, we will shift from diagnosing problems to building your personalized learning architecture. We will construct a practical, step-by-step framework that integrates all these lessons into a sustainable, daily practice. This is where theory meets the road, and you begin to build the habits that will carry you from frustrated beginner to confident practitioner. We will begin by designing your personal learning environment. This isn't about your physical desk. It's about crafting your digital and mental space to minimize distractions and maximize focus. We will talk about setting up your technology to serve your learning, not hinder it. This means using website blockers during deep work sessions, creating dedicated user profiles on your computer for study, and organizing your files and resources so you don't waste precious mental energy searching for things. Your environment must be engineered to make the right action the easiest action. When the path of least resistance leads you to practice, you have already won half the battle. Next, we will build what I call the feedback loop system. This is a practical method to ensure you are consistently getting the brutal, honest feedback we discussed earlier. We will explore how to find the right communities, how to ask the right questions, and how to structure your requests for feedback so that people are eager to help. We will also develop a personal review ritual, a weekly time where you audit your own progress against your personal benchmarks, celebrating small wins and adjusting your system for the week ahead. This creates a powerful engine of continuous, calibrated improvement. You are no longer guessing, you are navigating with data. Finally, we will end with a discussion on the psychology of the long game. Learning a significant skill is a marathon of sprints. There will be periods of rapid growth and agonizing plateaus. We will equip you with the mental models to persevere through the inevitable dips, to find joy in the plateau, and to understand that the feeling of being stuck is often the prelude to a major breakthrough. This final section is about cementing the identity of a lifelong learner, someone who is not defined by their current ability but by their relentless commitment to the process of growth itself. Let's begin building your new learning architecture, starting with the foundation, your environment. Most of us learn in spaces that are actively working against us. Notifications ping from our phones, browser tabs tempt us with social media, and our physical workspace is cluttered and uninspiring. We rely on sheer willpower to focus, but willpower is a finite resource that depletes rapidly. The solution is to stop fighting your environment and start designing it. You must become the architect of your surroundings, shaping them to make deep focus the default state. Start with your physical space. This doesn't require a lavish home office. It requires intention. Designate a specific chair and table as your learning zone. Keep this space clean and sparse. Have only the essential tools for your practice, your computer, a notebook, a pen. This physical ritual signals to your brain that it is time to shift into learning mode. It creates a psychological boundary between your leisure time and your focused practice time. The moment you sit in that chair, your mind begins to prepare for the work ahead. Now, let's talk about your digital environment, which is often the greater battleground. Your computer and phone are engineered to distract you. You must re-engineer them to serve you. This is a non-negotiable step. Install website blockers like Freedom or Cold Turkey and schedule sessions that block social media, news sites, and other digital rabbit holes during your dedicated learning time. Create a separate user profile on your computer exclusively for learning. This profile should have a different, more serene background and only the necessary software and bookmarks installed. The goal is to eliminate what I call decision fatigue. Every time you have to resist clicking on a distracting bookmark or navigating away from a distracting app, you use up mental energy that should be devoted to learning. By designing these distractions out of your environment, you preserve your cognitive resources for the task that truly matters. You are building a fortress for your focus. Now, let's construct the second pillar of your learning architecture, the feedback loop system. Understanding that you need feedback is one thing, building a reliable, low-friction system to get it is another. Without a system, seeking feedback becomes an ad hoc, emotionally draining task that you will likely avoid. We need to make it as routine and unremarkable as checking the weather. First, you must find your watering holes. These are the communities where knowledge and constructive criticism flow freely. Do not just lurk in large, generic forums. Seek out smaller, more focused groups. This could be a dedicated Discord channel for the programming language you're learning, a subreddit with strict rules for project sharing, or a local meetup group. Your goal is to find a place where the culture is one of helpfulness, not elitism. Spend a week observing. Who are the members that give detailed, kind, and useful critiques? These are your potential mentors. Engage by answering questions you know the answer to first. Become a valuable member of the community before you ask for a large investment of time from others. Second, you must master the art of asking the right question. A vague cry for help like "this doesn't work, please help" will be ignored. Instead, your request for feedback must be specific and show that you have already done the work. Structure it like a mini bug report. For any problem, state 1. Your goal. 2. What you tried. 3. What you expected to happen. 4. What actually happened. And crucially, include a link to your code on GitHub, a screenshot of your design, or a recording of your playing. This demonstrates respect for the community's time and allows them to provide a precise, actionable solution instead of a guess. This transforms you from a helpless beginner into a collaborative problem solver. Finally, institute a weekly review. Every Sunday, spend 30 minutes with your learning journal. Look at the feedback you received that week. What was the common theme? Did 3 people point out the same structural issue in your code? Did your writing group consistently find your introductions weak? This pattern is your gold mine. It tells you exactly what to focus on in the coming week. This closes the feedback loop. You receive input, you learn, you implement, and you check to see if the next round of feedback shows improvement. This systematic approach removes the emotion and turns feedback into pure, actionable data for your growth. We arrive now at the final piece of the architecture, the one that sustains all the others, the psychology of the long game. You can have the perfect environment and the most elegant feedback system, but if your mind isn't prepared for the reality of the learning journey, you will eventually quit. The path to mastery is not a straight, upward line. It is a series of explosive leaps, frustrating plateaus, and sometimes disheartening dips. Understanding this landscape is your ultimate defense against discouragement. The model I want you to internalize is called the S-curve of learning. Every new skill begins with a long, slow, and arduous climb. This is the foundation-building phase where progress feels infinitesimally slow. You are investing massive effort for seemingly small returns. This is where most people give up, convinced they lack the innate talent. But if you persist, executing your system consistently, you eventually hit an inflection point. The foundational knowledge clicks into place, and you experience a period of rapid, almost effortless growth. Everything seems to make sense. This is the exhilarating part of the journey. But the curve flattens again. You enter the plateau. This is the second great test of a learner's resolve. The rapid growth stops, and you feel stuck. It's crucial to understand that the plateau is not a sign that you have reached your limit. It is a sign that your brain is consolidating the rapid learning from the previous phase. It is building automated pathways, turning conscious effort into unconscious competence. The plateau is where you go from being good to being reliable. The mistake is to panic and jump to a new skill when you hit this plateau. The master stays on the plateau, trusting the process, knowing that this integration phase is what makes the skill truly their own. So how do you navigate this? You must learn to fall in love with the plateau. Find joy in the subtle refinements. Celebrate the slight increase in efficiency, the slight improvement in tone, the slight reduction in errors. Track these micro wins in your journal. Understand that the feeling of struggle is not the absence of learning, it is the sensation of learning itself. When you feel the most frustrated, you are often on the verge of a breakthrough. It is the cognitive strain that precedes a new level of understanding. Your mindset must shift from seeking constant validation through progress to valuing the quiet dignity of persistent practice. You are not just learning a skill, you are building the resilience, patience, and emotional fortitude of a learner. And that, more than any single technical achievement, is the true prize. This is the most important part of our entire journey together. Everything we have discussed, every mistake, every fix, every structural component, is meaningless if it remains a theory in your mind. The chasm between knowing and doing is where dreams and potential go to die. I am here to stand with you at the edge of that chasm and show you the first step. The single greatest differentiator between those who remain perpetual beginners and those who become masters is not talent, not IQ, not resources. It is the simple, profound, and often overlooked act of starting before you feel ready. You will never feel ready. There will always be one more tutorial to watch, one more book to read, one more piece of gear to buy. The feeling of being unprepared is a constant companion on the journey of growth. You must make a pact with yourself to ignore it. Action is the antidote to anxiety. The moment you move from passive consumption to active creation, you shift your entire identity. You are no longer a student of the skill, you are a practitioner of it. This shift is everything. So, I am going to ask you to do something right now. As this script ends, your work begins. Your first action is not to build the entire project. It is to define it. Open a text document. At the top, write project number 1. Then, write a single sentence describing the simplest possible version of what you want to create. It must be so simple it feels almost trivial. A website with a white background and a centered paragraph of text. A short story of 500 words about a lost key. A simple drawing of a coffee cup. This is your contract with yourself. This is your launchpad. You have the map. You have identified the traps. You have built your personal learning architecture. The only thing left is to take that first step into the wilderness. Embrace the mess. Welcome the confusion. Celebrate the small, ugly, imperfect creation because it is yours and it is real. It is a testament to your courage to begin. The world is filled with people who have great ideas. Be the one who has the finished project, however small. Go build something. And so, we find ourselves here, at the end of this script and the true beginning of your journey. I started by sharing my story of failure, that broken, glitchy website that made me question everything. I shared it not as a unique tragedy, but as a universal rite of passage. Every single person who has ever become proficient at anything has their own version of that story. The difference between those who get stuck in that moment and those who break through is not the absence of failure, but their response to it. They are the ones who, instead of shutting down, leaned in. They asked, "Why did this break?" and then they began the work of finding out. The 10 mistakes we've walked through are not a list of your shortcomings, they are a map of the labyrinth. You now know where the dead ends are. You know where the paths double back on themselves. You have the tools to navigate. You understand the paralyzing weight of perfectionism and have the weapon of the minimum viable product to cut through it. You recognize the gilded cage of tutorial hell and have the key of project-based learning to unlock the door. You see the mirage of distant goals and have the compass of systems to guide your daily steps. This knowledge is your power. But remember, a map is useless if it stays folded in your pocket. Your power remains latent until you activate it with action. The architecture we built, your designed environment, your feedback loops, your long-game mindset, is not a palace to be admired from afar. It is a workshop, waiting for the sounds of your tools. It will get messy. You will make mistakes that aren't on any list. You will discover new and creative ways to stumble. And that is the point. That is the process. Learning is not about avoiding wrong turns, it is about developing the resilience and the navigational skill to find your way back every single time. My final words to you are these: your journey is valid. Your struggles are data, not destiny. Your pace is your own. Do not compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. Trust your system. Embrace the struggle. Build your ugly, beautiful, imperfect first thing. Then build another. The path to mastery is paved not with flawless gems, but with the rough, discarded stones of your early attempts. Pick them up. Build with them. Keep going. I'll be out here on the path, building my own messy projects, right alongside you. The silence after the final step is often the most profound. The guide has fallen silent, the map is in your hands, and the path stretches out before you, illuminated only by the light of your own commitment. This is the moment where the theoretical becomes tangible. This is where you transition from consuming a narrative to living your own. Do not mistake this quiet for an ending. It is the genesis of your own story, the first quiet breath before the masterpiece is painted. You now possess a framework that separates successful learners from perpetual dreamers. You understand that the mind learns through struggle, not comfort. That the body fuels the brain. That consistency forges skill in a way that random bursts of effort never can. This knowledge is not a secret code, but a fundamental truth that has always existed. I have merely held up a mirror to the process, reflecting back the patterns that are universal to all growth. But remember, the most dangerous mistake of all is to believe that the work is done because the reading is complete. This is the seed of inertia. The true value of our time together will be measured not by what you have learned here, but by what you do in the next hour, the next day, the next week. It will be measured by the first line of code you write for your own project, the first sentence of your story, the first clumsy chord you play on an instrument. That action, however small, is the monument to your decision to change. So, as we part ways in this script, we meet again on the frontier of practice. I have given you every tool I possess. The rest is yours to build. The challenges you face will no longer be abstract concepts, but specific problems you have the resources to solve. When you feel the old pull of perfectionism, you will recognize it and deploy your MVP. When you feel the seduction of another tutorial, you will close the tab and open your code editor. You are no longer a passive passenger on this journey. You are the navigator, the engineer, and the driver. The road is yours. Now, go build. The true measure of this journey will not be taken today, or even tomorrow. It will be taken in the quiet moments 6 months from now, when the initial excitement has faded and the daily practice has become routine. It will be measured on that day when you encounter a problem that once would have made you quit, and instead, you find yourself methodically working through it, using the tools we've discussed. That is the moment of true transformation, not when you understand the concepts, but when they have become so ingrained that they are your default way of operating. This is about more than just acquiring a skill. It is about forging a new identity. You are slowly, deliberately, building the identity of someone who finishes projects, who values process over product, who sees feedback as a gift, and who understands that mastery is a direction, not a destination. Every time you choose your consistent 15-minute practice over a distracted 2-hour binge, you are voting for that identity. Every time you share an unfinished piece of work for critique, you are reinforcing it. This identity becomes the bedrock upon which all future learning is built. So, as we bring this conversation to its final close, I want you to carry one simple mantra with you: trust the process, not the emotion. Your feelings will lie to you. They will tell you you're not making progress when you are. They will scream that you should quit right before a breakthrough. Do not listen to them. Listen to your system. Did you do your scheduled practice? Then you are successful. Did you learn one small thing from a failure? Then you are advancing. The process is the truth, the emotion is just weather, passing through. You have everything you need. The path is clear, even when it is difficult. The community awaits your contributions. Your unique perspective is needed. Go now, and build. I cannot wait to see what you create. There is a silence that exists on the far side of this knowledge. It is not the silence of an ending, but the fertile silence of a beginning. I have handed you the tools, the blueprints, and the map. The theories and strategies we've dissected are now yours to command. But this is where my voice necessarily fades, and the most important voice in your journey must take over, your own. The transition from student to creator is the final, and most critical, step. It is the moment you stop following a path and start carving your own. This is the uncharted territory where true artistry is born. It is in the messy, unpredictable space beyond the checklist where you will combine these principles in ways I could never anticipate. You will face problems that have no clear tutorial, and in solving them, you will develop your own unique methodology. You will make mistakes that aren't listed in any guide, and in recovering from them, you will build a resilience that is uniquely yours. This is not a deviation from the path, it is the path. The goal was never to create a perfect replica of my learning process, but to equip you to design your own. So, step into that silence with courage. Let the absence of my instruction be the space where your own intuition grows stronger. Use the framework we built not as a cage, but as a scaffold. Climb it, and then build from the top. The structures you create from this point onward will be entirely your own. They will bear the unmistakable signature of your struggles, your insights, and your perseverance. This is how you move from understanding the principles of learning to embodying the spirit of a learner. The cathedral of your skill awaits its architect. You have the tools. You have the plan. Now, pick up your trowel. The most profound transformation occurs when the scaffolding falls away. These words, these strategies, this very script, they have all been scaffolding around the growing structure of your own capability. And now, as we reach the true end, it is time for that scaffolding to be removed. The structure must stand on its own. It will. The confidence you seek is not a prize you receive at the end of the journey, it is the quiet assurance that builds, brick by brick, each time you choose to act despite uncertainty, each time you prioritize progress over perfection. Do not look back on this as a finished lesson to be remembered. Instead, let it be a foundation you build upon. Let it be the North Star you glance toward when you feel lost in the woods of your own endeavors. The principles are simple, but their consistent application is a lifetime's work. They are the gentle disciplines that separate a life of intention from a life of reaction. You have been equipped not just for this single skill, but for the next one, and the one after that. You have been given a meta skill, the skill of learning how to learn. And so, we arrive at the only true conclusion there can be. The work continues. The practice calls. The blank canvas, the empty code editor, the silent instrument, they await your hand. You have navigated the common mistakes. You have the tools to fix them. The only question that remains is one that only you can answer: what will you create with this knowledge? The world is waiting for your answer, not in words, but in deeds. Go forth and build. And so, we have walked this path together, from that first moment of frustrated recognition to this quiet culmination. We began with the raw memory of failure and end with the refined tools for lifelong growth. This has never been about merely fixing errors, it has been about a fundamental rewiring of your approach to challenge itself. You now hold a different lens through which to view every obstacle. Where you once saw immovable walls, you now see stepping stones. Where you once felt the sting of criticism, you now feel the spark of insight. The true victory lies in the silent application of these principles when no one is watching. It is in the choice to practice for 10 minutes on a tired Tuesday evening. It is in the decision to share a half-formed idea with a peer, trusting their perspective. It is in the courage to abandon a perfect plan in favor of a completed, imperfect project. These are the moments that truly shape you. Mastery is not a grand trophy awarded on a stage, it is the accumulation of 10,000 such quiet, correct choices. This is not goodbye. It is a passing of the torch. My voice retreats so that yours may grow stronger. The strategies we've detailed are now your native language. The frameworks are your instinct. You no longer need to remember these lessons, you simply need to live them. They are the invisible architecture of your progress, the silent partner in your every future success. Go forward now, not as a student of this script, but as a master of your own continuous becoming. The next chapter is yours to write, and I have no doubt it will be extraordinary. This is where we end. Not with a final piece of advice, but with a quiet acknowledgement that you already possess everything you require. The searching is over. The preparation is complete. All that remains is the doing. This entire journey has been about one fundamental shift, from being a consumer of knowledge to a creator with it. And creation demands action. It demands that you step into the arena, armed not with certainty, but with the courage to begin despite your doubts. I leave you with this final thought. Your legacy as a learner will not be defined by the tutorials you consumed, but by the projects you shipped. It will be built upon the code you debugged, the sentences you revised, the canvases you filled. These creations, however flawed, are your testament. They are the proof of your courage to make something where there was once nothing. They are the answer to the voice of doubt, not through argument, but through irrefutable action. The script is finished. The theory is behind us. The blank page, the empty canvas, the silent studio, they are your world now. Fill them with your effort, your curiosity, and your unique voice. Do not strive for a perfect ending. Strive to begin the next thing. The work is waiting. And I, for one, cannot wait to see what you make of it.